So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have Lady Sarah and Keith Fields who are going to talk to us about credibility and communication virtually. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and mute myself, but in the chat I will go ahead and let everybody know that if you have any questions for them, feel free to enter those into the chat. I'll be able to ask them at the end or even ask them throughout as they discuss, because they're really good at Zoom and answering questions as they go. So
there is a spot, Kendra, where we will be halfway through. If there are any sort of questions at that point, it might be a good point to look at the questions from the first half and then do the second half. So we'll throw it to you about halfway through. If that works?
Sounds good.
Good.
Thank you. All right, so I'll turn it over to you guys, Lady Sarah and Keith Fields.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kendra. That's delightful.
I think they can tell which is which.
Do you think so? I think so.
Yeah,
I think they can get it. Thank you, Kendra, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Welcome. Lovely to see you. We're going to talk about some great things about communications today.
We certainly are. And the first thing I want to say is, I don't know if you remember the olden days when we just had a telephone and we only had verbal communication if we were working remotely. Back in those days, when I used to do a lot of telephone work, the saying then was smile before you dial. In fact, they even gave us stickers at one point to put on our telephones. You remember that? Rotary dials and everything we have. And it said, smile before you dial. And the idea behind it was that by smiling, it basically affected your voice and how you sounded, and that went through. And that was very true. And it's just an audio form of communication we are using. Now we're using a form of communication which has so many more bits of information going in your direction. And we need to be in control of as many of those bits of information as possible. The good news is all the stuff you learned in the olden days applies 100% to this medium. There's just some new things we have to think about.
But don't be disheartened, please, because even the hardened professionals are really struggling with this format.
Yeah.
We run a broadcast twice a week. We interview a whole variety of people, from mayors to Detroit Zoo, all sorts of people. But we also bring on professional performers, professional entertainers. And we have to sit down with some of them and say to them, you may be used to your Vegas show stage or entertaining for thousands of people, but this format here is a whole different ballgame, and you need to think about that. So even the professionals, we're spending a lot of time training and coaching. So if you're booking professionals, you need to go over some of these formats with them, because they're just not used to them.
No, even the professional entertainers, and yeah, we're all paddling around in the dark trying to learn and learning together as we go. So what we've done with this presentation is we've sort of broken it into two halves, and the first half is all about information. It's stuff you kind of need to think about before you even start doing a Zoom call. Now, obviously we've done Zoom calls, so we're going to have to go back and maybe patch up some things, but these are all background things that we could put right. Once they're done once, we never have to do them again. So that's the good news about the first list of things that we're going to be dealing with.
And the first one is your location. You've set up your office in your home. You know where you're going to be sitting, taking your calls, but you don't know where you're going to be doing your Zooms. And what we'd like to talk to you about is choosing that location, thinking about where you're going to be, because this now is your regular format. It's not just working at a desk, it's presenting, it's using Teams, whatever your format is, webinars. So let's think about that location.
Because in one sense, we're turning you all into TV stars.
This is it.
This
is your big moment.
And in one sense, you need a little TV studio to look your best. Does this kind of make sense? So finding that space is kind of important. And the first thing, of course, is the background. You can all, I don't know if you can actually see yourselves at the moment in this format, but next time you're on a Zoom call, have a look at that little screen, the little screen which has you in the middle of it. That is the most important piece of information for you to be aware of, because that will show you what everyone else can see. What's behind you, and what is behind you saying about you? Now, in our case, we have this, obviously, this London scene, because we
the Houses of Parliament, darling.
Yes. Which is a backdrop which we use for our streaming shows and things like that. But we created this for the show so it looked good. And that's the sort of important thing. So what you don't want behind you is a messy kitchen,
a drinks cabinet,
a drinks cabinet, all that kind of stuff. So what does your background say about you? Ask yourself that question. You might want the drinks cabinet behind you. Well, you might do in some
Okay.
situations, but make sure your choices are deliberate.
Actually, that's very true. We did interview a chef from Nino's, and Nino Savaggio's, that those of you that know the shop, and he was tremendous, and he spoke to us from his kitchen.
Yeah.
Very impressive kitchen.
But he was a chef, and it was kind of
Appropriate.
the right thing for him to do. It was appropriate. So what we're saying is make deliberate choices. That's the important thing.
Next up is lighting. Lighting should be coming at you. Again, for some of our performers, they're used to walking onto a dark stage or being slightly mysterious as magicians. Maybe as a stand-up comic, they want a spot. But you, in this format, need to be well lit. It's a whole different ballgame. You don't want the light behind you. You're going to end up with a little halo. How attractive is that? Not great for those who are watching you. For us, we actually have a window at the side, but we put a blind on it because otherwise we'll get bleached out. You won't be seen so well. So do be thinking about your lighting when you set up your studio.
And the other thing about light, which obviously affects the way the picture will look, the next thing is sound. In fact, sound is possibly, in the greater sphere of things, actually more important to have a good quality sound than it is to have a good quality picture. You've experienced this before. You've been trying to watch something and you can't quite hear it. You will give up. Sound is vital. So a couple of little tips about sound. Number one, don't mumble. Make sure you speak loudly and clearly, and maybe a touch slower than you normally would. That will be helpful as well in this medium. Secondly, know where your microphone is. Now, I know where my microphone is because I've got it pinned on here because we're using a bit of an upgraded system. But you have a microphone in your laptop, in your computer somewhere. See if you can find out where that microphone is and make sure you speak to the microphone. In fact, I would take it one step further and say speak through the microphone and project a little bit more so you're heard very clearly by the audience. Which means
sound is being heard wherever you are, and one of the things you need to be thinking about is what other sound is going on around. We do a lot of filming for WXYZ, and we are so aware of our sound. We'll actually turn our fridge off, or we'll...
And the sump, I have to turn the sump pump off because every so often it goes off and it ruins a take.
And you don't want that.
The basement's flooding, but we're going to be on telly, so it's all right.
Think about that sound. Do you want the kids screaming in the background? Maybe on certain occasions you do. But sound is an important thing, and what people can hear you. And just like you turn off your phone for a meeting, turn off your phone before you go into a webinar or a Zoom so that people aren't picking up on that. Also be aware, you may have your emails going with a little ding noise to say you've got a new email coming in. Turn that one off as well. Very distracting for those listening to you.
Oh, here's another crazy one. I just thought of this actually. You do find sometimes people will sit at home and they'll be doing this with a... And you can't see what's going on, but you can hear this noise, and someone's just got a pen and they're just tapping it because they forget that all this noise goes through. So just think very much about that. Nextly, I'm making up words now. Next.
Excellent grammar.
Next. They call it English. I should be natural. Next is your appearance, which is something that you can do so much with. Nature only gives us what it gives us, but we believe you should make the absolute best of it you possibly can. So once again, think of the image. Be deliberate with what you wear. Be deliberate with the way you do your hair, the way you look. The image you are putting over is very important. No one really wants to see you in PJs with half a beard. That's not a good look, which is one of the reasons why I'm wearing the hat, because, well, I wear it when I'm on stage performing, which is a good excuse, but the real reason is I haven't had a haircut for 3 months. Not
Moving on
not a pretty sight.
To other sorts of appearance, where you are on the screen. I'm sure many of you have had the instance when you're halfway down. This is not great. Yes. Although you can see again the Houses of Parliament. Oh, I can't do that for long.
Help me, I can't get up, I'm stricken.
You don't want too much space above your head. You need to be aware of that. If you're in the screen on your own, again, fill the screen, be in the middle of the screen. So do think about your appearance inside that screen. I was going to say, we have the distance, how close you are to the camera is something else to think about. I'm going to move back and show you what the effect of being too far away from the camera is, that you end up not filling the screen at all. And you can see how you can see Sarah much more clearly than you can me. So put yourself in the picture and make sure it looks like a nice picture. And we find that again with our entertainers. They need to be in the right position, for the.
Well, they need to be directed, don't they? You know, they have directors. They perform
moving on, darling. Moving on.
Where are we up to? Yes, appearing to the screen. Yes, check your tech. Check your tech. Very, very important thing. At the moment, we've concentrated on the image we're sending into the camera and into the microphone. But I'm guessing at the moment, you have no idea of what sort of quality the other people are seeing at the other end. Part of that is obviously dictated by the wire and your Wi-Fi speeds and things like that. But the other part is the equipment. If you've got a laptop, which is maybe 3 or 4 years old, and that's what you're using, the camera is going to be a pretty poor quality, because 3 or 4 years ago, we weren't doing this video conferencing so much. New laptops have much better quality cameras. In fact, probably your best camera is your iPhone. That will give you the clearest camera. But you need to check your tech. How good is your microphone? How good is your camera? And you do that by putting a friend in front of it and going to their computer. And so you swap computers. So you can see how good their tech is and they can see how good your tech is.
Perfect. So just to sum up on your location, do think about your background, your lighting, your microphone, distractions, appearances, your position, and that tech. Very simple, but it makes the world of difference.
So that's kind of the first half of the stuff we wanted to talk about, and that's covered quite a lot of stuff which we think is all very, very important to do before the meeting. Now, are there any questions that have come up, Kendra, that you want us to discuss yet?
Yes. So one of the questions is on backgrounds, virtual backgrounds. What is your opinion on those? Because yours does not look like a virtual background, because I'm not seeing that halo and nothing's disappearing when you're going back there.
I'll tell you a secret. You know why? Because it's not a virtual background.
It's a real background. It's actually...
This is our wall. This is actually printed on the wall. It really is there.
Bottom line is, Kendra, virtual backgrounds, if you've got the right setup and you've got a good camera and good quality, it can look great. It really can. But if your computer's a few years old, it just looks slightly and you don't want that halo, that effect where it doesn't look like you're really there, because everyone knows it's a virtual background and everyone's actually more interested in what's really going on behind you. You also do need a very modern computer or a very modern camera system to handle the virtual backgrounds. But you can get these pop-ups now.
Yeah.
Pop-up screens, you can buy them online, all sorts of places.
They fit on the back of your chair, and they actually come quite small like this. They're these things that sort of twist and get bigger. You may know what I'm talking about, but they fill up the space behind you here, clip on your chair, and you can have a green screen or whatever type of screen you want, or you can have your company logo printed on them, that kind of thing.
Oh, if you can brand it, people, go for branding.
Yeah, make your background deliberately choose the background. What does your background say about you? That's the important question.
Okay,
next question.
And then the next question was, they're not always camera ready. So they've been not turning on their camera a lot because, like most people, they haven't been getting their hair cut. So what do you think about whether or not you should have your camera on in like some of the larger team meetings and things like that?
I think personally, if you're presenting, obviously you have your camera on. I think that goes without saying. But if you're watching, I mean, I think it's a matter of you can't tell people to turn their camera on, but I think it makes them accountable.
Yeah.
I think it really makes you accountable. And no, we don't look our best, but we all don't look our best. So I think that's to be taken into consideration.
I think there's also different situations. The rules are developing, basically, for these things. The social etiquette rules are developing as we speak. And there is no necessarily right or wrong, but quite often there will be rules set down by the organization. If it's a business meeting, cameras on may be a requirement of the meeting. So it very much depends. We believe that we like to see people, and we like to see people because we can tell who's engaged and who's not engaged. So we would always much prefer to be able to see the audience.
And I think, again, depending on your group, so for schoolrooms, I think they're very hot on turning your cameras on so you can see each other. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted at the moment, Kendra.
I love it when that happens. It's pouring down rain here in Troy, so I can hear it on my roof, so I keep hitting mute. So
hasn't got to us yet. I just
I'm at
looked.
I'm at Kurt's in Livernois, so
Coming our way.
it's common places. So,
Yeah.
So the next question, and if anybody wants to raise their hand, I can unmute you to ask a question too, and allow you guys to talk. So feel free to do that. But we did have a question. Do you have any specific tips for someone's doing some medical school interviews? So for interviewing, anything special that they should be looking at doing?
If you're interviewing,
Sorry, can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Are they interviewing for medical? Is this a doctor interviewing a patient, or?
I think it's for medical school, for admission into medical school.
Oh, okay, they're going to an interview.
It's all about being professional, thinking about that lighting, thinking about your sound, test your sound out. And you can test it. We know you can test it. You can go and, you know, have a Zoom with your friends, as it were, and test your sound out there. The technical side of the whole interview process, there's a lot you can do. Obviously, your Wi-Fi connection is, you know, that, as we know, if this storm hits, then maybe our Wi-Fi will go down. But you can do a lot on your own tech. You really can, and it's worth getting it right beforehand.
Yeah, making sure because if you think about this, you need to be better than everyone else. That's kind of what we're aiming at here. Get people better than everyone else. And let's just take the idea that you're going to be doing an interview for medical school. Maybe half the others are doing it on laptops with old cameras. So make sure your signal is better, because if they see you better, they'll know you better. And a lot of the stuff we're going to cover in the second half, I don't want to jump too far ahead, will actually be very pertinent, because we're going to be talking about how to behave during the meeting. And some of that stuff about how you can actually reach through the camera and reach through the lens and actually really speak to people at the other end. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. So listen up, that stuff's coming.
And you're muted again, Kendra.
I think that's all the questions. I know, I got to get better at that. Hang on, because I've got the question pane hiding my mute. So let me hide that. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to type those in, but I'll let you guys go ahead and continue.
Okay, so we've dealt very much with before the meeting and the things you have to think about there. So now we're actually going to think about during the meeting, and we're going to give you our #1 tip of where you can actually find the perfect people to learn from, to learn how to do exactly what we're doing now. All you have to do is something which maybe most of you do every day anyway, and that is watch the news. Newscasters and people that do those late night chat shows are absolutely the best people at using the camera medium. They know how to reach through the camera. They know little techniques, like you see a newscaster will do something like this. He'll pick up something and he'll read it and he'll put it down again. There was nothing written on that piece of paper. He knew what he was going to say because it was on the teleprompter. But it looks good. So they use all these little techniques. So watch what they do. And as you watch them, always ask the question, what are they doing and why are they doing it? And why are they keeping my interest?
And that's very true. Why are they keeping your interest? Why do you like watching one rather than the other? What is it about it? What holds your attention? So swap news channels, always a good point.
Yes.
But look at different news channels, but also decide why you like a certain newscaster and what they're doing that's right.
And don't listen so much to what they're saying, but look at how they are using the medium. So how they're moving, and all that kind of stuff. So
on that note, during the meeting, we know you're at home, everybody's at home. That doesn't mean that you pick up your cup and sort of slurp away at it. Again, your sound is such that people will hear you slurping.
Yeah.
People will hear you crunching. And often we don't like it when we're in a social setting, let alone when you can just hear it through the microphone. So again, think about what's in your hand, how your hands are moving, and what they can hear of you slurping in eating.
Yeah. And all the tapping and stuff like that, comes into that as well. Those back.
I'm aware that actually my jewelry is probably making a little bit of a clicking noise too.
So take off your jewelry. There we go. Hot tip, fresh off the press. So you may be just listening to a meeting, and this is a tip really for the people who are, when you're on screen, when you're being seen and you're listening, we think it's very important to be an active listener. And by that I mean, when you're doing a presentation and you can see the people out there, you want to be able to see that they are paying attention. You don't want to see people on their cell phones, sending texts, not paying any attention. So by an active listener, look at the screen, be engaged, smile, nod, even occasionally, you know, clap your hands or something like that. We encourage people when we do Zoom shows, which we do occasionally, and in that situation we can see maybe 20, 30, 40 families or 40 monitors of families on the screen. We encourage them to wave like this rather than clap, because we see this. So you can actually find new ways of using the medium to interact.
And for our friend who's going through an interview process, and for others out there who will be interviewed in this medium, again, be active, listening to your interviewer, listen, nod, take in what they're saying. So next, we want to think as a speaker, reading notes. Obviously, Keith and I are looking at notes right now, but what you're not seeing us doing is looking right down like this. Otherwise, you would see my roots. That is not an attractive look. I realize that.
I don't have roots. It's not a problem for me.
So do think about that. Don't put your notes up in front of your face either. You have a screen and nobody can see round the screen. If you really want to, you can put your little post-it notes around the edge of the screen and read your script that way. Obviously, you can make your screen smaller and you can have a little teleprompt style at the side. But don't be looking down so everybody's seeing at the top of your head.
And the most important thing through all of this is that you reach through the camera to the people on the other side. And one of the best ways to do that is quite simply just to smile a lot more generously. The more you smile and the more generous you are with your laughter and your encouragement, the better you will be perceived both as a speaker and as a listener. So these are things you need to practice. You need to practice how you smile. And the good news is most of us spend a few minutes a day looking in a mirror. Some of us spend even longer than that. I wasn't saying anything, but
thank you, darling.
We all shave or put on makeup or do something, but that's a good time to actually practice reusing our facial muscles and really finding a nice, warm smile. Practice your smile. It sounds crazy, but it really is.
And for those of you who are of a certain generation, you have been brought up with selfies and you're used to it. You're used to taking pictures. For those of you who aren't of those generations, those young millennials, you're not smiling so often. You know, there is this phrase of resting bee face, and it's true, because you just don't smile. As we get older, we look like him, and that's not an attractive look. And if you're staring back and forth at people looking like that, so do engage in the conversation just as you would on a one-to-one. Smile, look at them.
Yeah, and more, on top of that, the next thing we have to say is you have more than just your face here. This is a visual medium. It is also a verbal medium. And as a result of that, you need to make your voice as interesting as possible. It's kind of like our competition is really television. And that's, to be a professional, our competition, as I mentioned earlier, the television news people, that's what we want to be like. So we want to be happy, we want to use our voice, the pace, the volume, the speed. Is there anything else I'm missing out from that list? I can't remember.
Vocal variety. For those of you who are keynote speakers or who've maybe done presentations before, Toastmasters, you'll know about vocal variety. You really don't want to be monotone. You want to be enthusiastic. You want to be excited. You also want to show emotion.
Oh, yes.
It's okay to show how you genuinely feel and show that emotion.
And one of the little secrets that I've discovered recently, and I've started using, not all the time, because if you overuse it, it gets a bit overbearing, but just leaning into the camera is you at the right time. It's kind of weird when you're doing it at the wrong time, but there are times if you want to actually make a point, you have got a lot of movement from leaning into the camera and actually really looking down the camera lens here, where I have a different sort of emotional strength to if I'm relaxing back here. So you've got that motion, which can actually add a lot of power and a lot of feeling and a lot of emotion to what you're actually doing.
But at the same time, you don't want to be fidgeting the whole time either.
No.
So do you think about that? And finally, timing. I was in a meeting only this morning and we were working on presentations and who was going to present at this meeting. And a lady said, oh, I normally give a 45-minute presentation. Holy moly, you can't give a 45-minute presentation on this format. In fact, we said to Kendra, we will do 30 minutes because even in our interviews, we interview people for 10 minutes at a time.
And we've got about 3 minutes left.
Because one, people won't hold their attention. You won't hold people's attention for that long anymore. They have 10 minutes. I would question out there in webinar space, how many of you have checked your emails, maybe made yourself a cup of coffee because I can't see you, had a look at your phone, maybe played Candy Crush just while we've been talking. Mm-hmm. So if you are a keynote speaker, if you are presenting, cut that presentation down to 10 minutes, I would say, if you can.
Yeah, one of the things we've done with the presentations we do, we're performers, we do a magic show, and a few people have asked us to do a Zoom magic show. And initially they say, you know, can you do a half-hour show, like, or a 45-minute show, what we normally do in a theatre or a comedy club or something like that. It doesn't kind of work the same way. So what we do is we break it into 3 sort of 10-minute sessions, and then it sort of, it changes the whole energy of the meeting. So
do think about your timing. Timing is paramount. Your 45-minute presentation, or you know, even when you did your TEDx's, worked well, but now in this format it won't. So timing is important. Again, to sum up, on during the meeting, you want to think about your sound, people hearing you slurp, listening in a meeting, being an active listener, enjoying the speaker. You want to smile, think about your timing, and of course, be aware when you're reading your notes. Very simple sum up. Again, Kendra, we can give you some more comments on that or handouts.
Anything else that you have that, any questions come in that you want us to deal with?
So we actually have 2. So one is, while presenting to a group of 10 to 20 people, and you guys covered this a little bit, how do you increase individual participation so it's more conversational and not just someone presenting? So how do you bring in people, you know, in a situation where you can see them all?
Well, in general, you do want to have other people muted when you're making a presentation, because the background sounds inevitably come through. If you've got 20 people, something's going to happen. So we say mute people, and in Zoom, I'm not sure if it's like this with all the other programs. I don't think it's like this.
No, it's similar with Teams. It depends on your program.
Depends on the platform you're using. But with Zoom, even if people are muted, they can press the space bar. I'm going like this because my keyboard just here. You can press the space bar, and it's like the button on a walkie-talkie. You press to talk and then let it go again. So you can actually establish that, teach the audience that, and then you could say, I can see John is over there. John, I want to ask you a question, and then get John to wave back at you so you know you've made contact, and then he will hit the space bar and answer the question. So draw people in literally by mentioning their name.
And be aware though, when you do draw people in, it takes a little bit longer. It's not going to be instant. It'll take them a while to hit the space bar. It'll take them a while to think about things.
Yeah, you find this happens. So people are sitting there and you talk to them, and the first moment is, oh, he's talking to me, and their face suddenly changes like this, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to do something, because they were zoned out, and you get that lovely moment. But so you have to leave it a beat, but that's probably the best thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anything else you have to say on that?
No. Kendra's got another question before we round up.
I have one more question, and that's on background noise. Some people can't control pets and other things. Any recommendations on how to handle the pets and kids situation? I know people have been a little bit understanding lately because of everything going on.
I think they are, and I think going back to your interview, I think you make it clear at the very beginning. You say at the very beginning of your meeting, of your presentation, my cat will come through. I think if people are aware of it, and not to make light heart of it, but there are some things we just can't stop in this format, and therefore to be honest and open.
Really. You just have to deal with it. There are some things you can do to help the problem. A better microphone is one of the things you can use. If you have an ear-set microphone with a microphone here, that's going to be designed to pick up your voice much more than background noise. If you're using the microphone on your PC, then that is designed to pick up the general noise in the area. So that is another way that you can actually deal with that. But you just have to own it sometimes, don't you? And go, oh, cat, have you seen my cat? You know, chuck it off and carry on.
Kendra, there's one other point we have a little wrap up for you as well, but there is something else that we didn't touch on, and that is the end of a meeting. As you know, when we finish a meeting, normally we'll say goodbye, we'll shake hands, that sort of thing. But actually, be aware how you're going to get out of this meeting. How do you leave it? Do you want to know where to turn off? You don't want to be fumbling around and thinking, where's my exit button? So just be aware of those sort of things as well. Again, it comes under tech, but it's how you get out of this meeting.
Yeah, become an expert on the medium. There's nothing better to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and to be the person who is teaching everyone else how to do it. And that immediately sets you up as a leader in the field. So become an expert on all this stuff is definitely good advice. So if we sort of just round up, we'd really want to say that the bottom line is what we're dealing with here is a new normal. It takes sometimes a big push to start people using a new technology, like all this Zooming and teleconferencing. And that push has now happened. And I think we can categorically say, even if we all go back to working normal jobs in offices, we are still going to be having Zoom meetings much, much more than we ever did before.
Yeah.
And because of that, we say now is the time to start getting it right.
Yeah. And we have clients now who've rung us who will never have another gathering because they've got, friends with compromised immune systems, staff with compromised immune systems. So they won't have a gathering again. So speaking conferences have changed. Fundraisers have changed. Not all of them, not forever. Don't be disillusioned, but they have changed. So therefore get used to this. And again, just on a really positive note, you are still experts in your field. In medicine, law, sales, whatever your field is, you're still experts. You're just finding a new way to communicate. And you can do this. You can really do this.
Yeah,
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. It's not. In fact, our advice to you now is to say, go out and be a TV star, because if you start feeling like that, it's amazing how just an extra bit of energy just actually sets you apart from everyone else, because everyone else is just sitting there like this.
Attractive. Over to you, Kendra. What else? Oh, you're muted again. Here we go. She's back.
Okay, I muted myself. Okay, so that's all of the questions. I really appreciate your time. Speaking of TV shows, I know that you guys have a cup of tea.
A cup of tea.
Tell everybody a little bit about that. And then I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your corporate training and, of course, the Magic Soiree.
Which do you want first?
Well, let me just knock on the head the Magic Soiree. The Magic Soiree is a dinner theatre that we love running. It's here in Troy, 50, 60 seaters. It's where you can see live magic, but obviously not right now.
Not right now.
So
not
therefore,
right now. We're looking into what's going to be happening in the future at the moment. So watch this space.
Keep your finger on the pulse.
It is right here in Troy. So we actually will be holding it at Camp Ticonderoga. So it's a very local event.
And so the magicsoiree.com is where you'll see that. In the meantime, we're running a twice weekly broadcast called A Cup of Tea. Tea is for Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:00, and it's all about Metro Detroit. It's about positivity within the area, what's been happening.
It's a good news show.
It's a good news show. So that's been going on as well.
And we also have a bit of magic on the show.
We do.
We do. We have magicians from literally all over the world appearing on the show. Coming up in the next week, we've got a guy who, up until 6 months ago, had one of those big illusion shows in Vegas. He's a good friend of ours. And we've got another guy who is a world champion magician from Canada. So we've got some really exciting guests coming up.
And that's just a half an hour show you can tune into during the day, have a cup of tea and watch the show. And then the other thing that we do is the corporate speaking and the motivational entertainment. Go for it, Keith.
Well, on the training side, we do things like more advanced versions of this. Obviously, if we're doing one-on-one sessions with people to help them improve their communication techniques, we do whole seminars for whole day seminars. With some companies, we're actually going into them every couple of months. We go back and do a half day. With the people who are doing regular presentations, it's very important to keep your skill base up. And now we're using new mediums. It's very easy to fall into bad habits very quickly. So we work with people to make sure they don't fall into those bad habits, and they always put out their best side. That's on one side. And then there's the motivational entertainment side, which is something else we do, which is not happening much at the moment. We miss that so much. Where we perform at anything from fundraisers to comedy clubs to corporate functions, where people need a show which is going to have a good positive feel and a sort of give everyone a good energetic boost.
Sounds like we're doing far too many different things, but really it's about entertainment, communication, and motivation.
Just about sums it up. Well done.
It does.
Perfect. You did that very well.
It's like we know about this
It's almost
stuff.
like you're a professional.
Oh, we should. I think I'm taking him home, Kendra. Oh no, 28 years.
We are home.
Oh yeah, that's.
You're not taking me anywhere. I'm staying right here.
Sorry, Kendra, go for it.
Oh, you're good. No, thank you guys so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Had some really great feedback. Thank you for the presentation. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because you guys have a lot going on. It's a lot, but it's a lot different. And so
Yes.
we really do appreciate it. For anybody that hasn't watched A Cup of Tea or has not experienced the Magic Soiree when it reopens at Camp Ticonderoga, I strongly recommend it. I have people and clients that have been, and they're still talking about it. So up close magic and faraway magic and all of that. So thank you guys so much.
Perfect. Well, put out no, there we go. I was going to put something in the chat, but there you go. You'll see it all up there.
TheMagicSoiree.com. She's just put the website in the chat, so you can find out that's where A Cup of Tea is and everything else.
I'll leave it with you.
Thank you guys so much, and I'll send out those links in the follow-up email, along with a link to the recording of today's webinar. So thank you guys, everybody, for joining us, and thank you to Lady Sarah and Keith Fields for joining us and giving us some tips on how to be more confident and communicate better virtually.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.